Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Parks. Thank you so much for coming in today to talk about your student. I am Ms. Rowe, and I am Nick's pre-calculus teacher for the year. Overall, Nick is performing really well in my class, and I would just like to discuss a few things we could do to boost his performance. Now, some general observations I've had about your son is that he's a very easygoing student. He always comes to class ready to learn, and he does like to joke around during instruction sometimes. Overall, this does not cause a problem for me, and I've only had to intervene a few times. Nick gets along really well with all of his classmates and does seem to be very good friends with each and every one of them. Lastly, although Nick does have a severe learning disability, it's very hard to indicate if you are not familiar with him, and that's why I think it's important for us to discuss his strengths and weaknesses that we could assess and work on so we can better help his disability in the classroom. Now, some student strengths I've recognized about Nick is that he has very strong foundational math skills. This is most likely as a result of his previous math classes and the teachers he's had in the previous years before me. Nick also avidly participates in classroom activities and enjoys contributing to discussion during instruction a lot. He loves to talk and answer questions and put forth new ideas, and I think this makes the learning environment much more rich for him and the students in the classroom. Nick, like I said, has very strong social skills in and out of the classroom, and he's very good friends with people in his class as well as outside of his class. He is, as you know, a very strong football player and has a scholarship for the fall, so you can tell that he is very good at working in a team inside and outside of the classroom. Like I said before, he does have some problems staying on task, but most of the time this isn't a problem for me, and I only have had to intervene a few times. Now, some areas of need for Nick is note-taking skills. Although he is seeming to understand most of the instruction, he doesn't necessarily write things down. Same thing with showing work when solving problems. I believe building his strengths in this area would help him become more organized in his work and organize his thinking, and that's why I think it would be an area of need for him. I do think Nick does have a little growth and maturity to do. I think this is a result of him being comfortable in his learning environment, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but after high school I would urge him to work in growing and becoming more mature and being able to conduct himself in a professional way. Another area of need is prompting and questioning. While Nick is good at answering questions in a group setting, when I'm asking him questions one-on-one, he does need a little bit more prompting to help guide his thoughts and get him to where I need to be. Same thing with goal and progress tracking. I try to be as specific as possible when I'm giving him instructions so he's able to see what his goal is and avidly work towards it in a constructive way. Now, the class I teach, like I said, is pre-calculus. It's a mixture of topics involving various levels of trigonometry and algebra. Algebra topics covered involve more advanced problems using students' foundational understandings that they should have built in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. So they're using that knowledge from those two classes and building upon it in my class to answer more advanced and more in-depth problems. This is like shifting and reflecting graphs, rational functions, and logarithms. The trigonometric topics are new and sometimes difficult for students to understand. I know when I first learned it, it was difficult, and it just takes a lot more work to get to an understanding of those topics. These things include the unit circle, solving trig equations, and graphing trig identities. Now, pre-calculus requires a good amount of memorization of formulas and material, which Nick has shown a very advanced ability to do so, which I think is one of the reasons he's performing very well in my class. This class is also built to prepare students for calculus, which I think Nick is more than prepared to complete, and I think his performance in the class shows that he would really excel in his calculus class in the future. Now, pre-assessment results for Nick. The question I asked during my lesson was to divide the polynomial you see by x plus 3. For the pre-assessment, Nick was able to answer the question without any recent instruction and did come to the correct answer, but in his work he had a few notation errors and he did not represent his answer in the correct form. When he turned in his paper to me, he wasn't as confident as he usually is as well. I think this is a result of him not necessarily writing things down or showing his work, which caused him to be less confident in his answer and his ability to answer the question. For the post-assessment, Nick actually excelled. He showed that he had learned a lot from the lesson and showed no notation errors in his work, represented his answer in the correct form, and had a completely confident persona when he handed me his paper, which showed me that he had really grown in confidence and understood the material. The lesson plan that I taught had a goal of students understanding how to apply long division to a wide range of polynomials and representing their answers in the correct form using the division algorithm. This lesson tied material to prior knowledge of numerical division, which uses the same properties and representation type, but just with a few differences involving solving process and notation at the end with the given polynomials. The lesson slowly built up understanding of the topic using scaffolding of problems. I tried to include regular numerical division at the beginning and then build up using small polynomials and larger ones towards the end so students could feel a lot more confident in their work and their ability to solve those problems. The UDL principles I used in my lesson involved representation, engagement, and action and expression principles. This included, for representation, scaffolding of prior knowledge, like I said, and a handout that I handed to the students before the lesson was conducted. Engagement was composed of group discussion and collaborative work. During the lesson, I would ask students questions and have them talk within their groups about the topic and work on solving problems together, as well as at the end, have them as a team come up to the board and each solve problems together and explain where they got their answers to the class. Overall, for action and expression UDL principles, students were given personal whiteboards to work on. They could work on their paper, or they could even use the tablets that they were given during their class. And differentiated modeling in the form of factoring. Now, if students were able to detect that you could use factoring in the problem, you wouldn't even need to use this application of long division, and you could solve the problem in a different way, giving students the opportunity to use multiple modeling practices to answer the problems and complete it in a differentiated way. Overall, students were very engaged and perceptive to the material, and I would say that Nick performed really well in the class and gained a lot of more insight about the material and grew in his understanding of the knowledge of this lesson. My overall experience with Nick was he is such a wonderful student and he has grown in so many ways. While the few weeks I was there, he grew in his potential to answer questions during class and engage in me with a way that was academic and personal, and just show me how wonderful of a student he is. My experience with working with the class has showed me that I should always value the opportunity to work with real students in the classroom, because that's where you get most comfortable with working with students and really get a hand at working with them one-on-one and gain new understandings about what it means to be a teacher in the classroom. I learned about what it means to have a learning disability that is not always noticeable, which in Nick's case is so. I feel a lot more prepared to instruct students with a wider range of disabilities, and I've also gained a deeper understanding of how to implement supports and inclusive activities during lessons. Overall, I feel much more prepared for my job as a teacher in the future, working with different students in a diverse classroom and helping all students to achieve in the ways they need by supporting them in all of their endeavors in the classroom and giving them the supports they need during my instruction.